Hello dear students, this is Nilesh Patil sir, your English teacher, and I'm here today to teach this beautiful poem Where the Mind is Without Fear, which is the very first poem in 10th SSC English textbook. This video is useful for students who are appearing for boards this year, that is in 2021. This video is also useful for students who are going to appear for 10th boards the next year, that is in 2022. So I would request you to forward this link to the students who might find it useful. Let's begin the explanation where the mind is without fear. Dear students, before we talk about the poem, let's know something about the poet and the background of this poem. I told you Rabindranath Tagore wrote this beautiful piece where the mind is without fear. It was written around 1900 and it was included in Tagore's collection of poems named Gitanjali. Many of you might have heard the name Gitanjali since it was the collection of poems for which Tagore received the Nobel Prize for Literature. It was in the year 1913 that Tagore was awarded with this prestigious award, and he was the first non-European to win this award. Dear students, where the mind is without fear is a vastly read and discussed poem. In fact, Tagore himself recited the lines of this poem in a session of Congress. It was originally composed in Bengali and later it was translated in English by Tagore himself. Dear students, Gitanjali is an anthology of poems. An anthology is collection of literary pieces. Dear students, it is rightly described as profoundly sensitive, deeply sensitive, fresh, and beautiful verse. In this collection of poems, you will find the poems on social and political issues as well. This poem is, in fact, a prayer. Rabindranath Tagore is asking for something. What does he ask from God Almighty, whom he calls my Father in this particular poem? Dear students, we were being ruled, India was being ruled by the British when Tagore wrote this poem. And he had a vision of free India. India where people will be fearless, they will be free from social evils, they will be free to get education, they will be free to help their economy grow. Tagore wanted God Almighty to bless his people, his countrymen, so that his country, that is our beloved India, will be a heaven of freedom. Now let us know the line by line explanation of this poem, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Tagore wants his people to be fearless, free from fear. He wants the people to have self-esteem. The head is held high simply means people have self-respect. They are proud. Dear students, the British were ruling over our country and we had nothing to be proud about. Many Indians believed that they were inferior whereas the British were superior. Tagore asks from God that fearlessness in his people, that self-esteem which was required in his people. Where knowledge is free, let's move ahead. The second line, where knowledge is free. Dear students, you will see this whole poem is one big sentence in which the poet is expressing his idea or vision of an ideal nation where there'll be freedom in the true sense of terms. So he's imagining an ideal country, his country, where people will be fearless and they will have self esteem, self respect. He wants education, knowledge to be free. This does not mean that he wants it to be free in the market, but he wants it to be accessible to all. You might have an idea in the pre independence period, not all people in India had the right to education. There should be no restriction on availing knowledge, where the world has not been broken up into fragments. He imagines a country where people are united. Fragments are what? Parts. He wants the world to be united. You see, world is divided by narrow domestic walls. Now, what are narrow domestic walls? These are the divisions of caste, color, race, religion, gender that separate people. Tagore wants to live in a country where people are not divided by these walls, where words come out from the depth of truth. People are truthful, honest. They do not cheat each other. They do not lie. Tagore wants his people to be honest and truthful, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. Tireless striving simply means continuous efforts. Rabindranath Tagore wants his people to take continuous efforts. Stretching arm simply refers to trying to achieve the goal. So he wants his people to try and achieve perfection in whatever the tasks they take up. You see, a country will be advanced when its people will strive, will take efforts to achieve perfection. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way. You need to understand this line, pay careful attention to it, where the clear stream of reason. Dear students, here the clear stream is compared with reason. But this comparison is indirect. Reason simply means logic, rationalism. Tagore wants that the clear stream of reason, that is rationalism, scientific approach, has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Dear students, you need to understand the dreary desert sand here are the superstitions. Dreary desert, superstitions, customs, traditions that held us back. You might be aware many of the evils that existed in the pre-independence period and even in the post-independence period, we see some of these evils continue to exist in our society. These hold us back. One of them, the biggest of them, I would say, is superstitions. We see people in our country, unfortunately, even today, believe in dead habits, that is, customs which mean nothing, superstitions which deprive some classes and people of their basic rights, superstitions that hold us back. Now, Tagore did not just want to, I must say, he did not want to hurt the sentiments of the people. Therefore, he just found a way of telling it in mild words. So he is saying the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. So he has said something which is unpleasant in mild words. Many of you might have guessed it is a figure of speech called euphemism. Also, the clear stream flowing into the desert and disappearing builds an image in our mind. So it is an example of imagery as well. Let's move ahead where the mind is led forward by thee. Here the poet is calling out to God, addressing God, appealing him, God, I want to live in a country where the mind is led forward by you. He wants people to believe in God. Tagore wants his people to believe in God, to be led by God himself. Now here, you see, when we say that God is leading us, that simply means we know what is right and what is wrong. Our actions are noble. Tagore wants our actions to be noble. And that's why he is asking, appealing God to lead the people, the mind. Now, where to lead the mind? Into ever widening thought and action. Rabindranath Tagore wants people to take up actions that are noble, that are good. He wants them to have good thoughts, good deeds. Ever widening simply means broad minded. Into that haven of freedom, the last line is quite meaningful, dear students. If all these things that Tagore asks, his wish comes true, God blesses him with all these things that he is asking, Tagore is sure that his country will be nothing short of a heaven of freedom. It will be a free country in the true sense of term. It will be an independent country in the true sense of term. Therefore, he calls such a country heaven of freedom. And he asks Almighty to awake his country, to lead his country into that heaven of freedom where all these things are granted, where people are fearless, where they are proud of themselves, they have the self esteem, where knowledge is accessible to all, where people are united, where people are truthful, honest, they are hardworking, where the people have scientific approach, they say no to dead habits, superstitions, logic rules, not superstitions, where the people are led by God Almighty. They know what is right and what is wrong. Into such a broad and good, noble actions and thoughts, he wants God to lead his country, to awake his country. This is what is his prayer. If all these things are demands are met, I will not call them demands, these are wishes. So if these all wishes are met, Tagore believes his country will be a heaven of freedom. Dear students, having discussed the meaning of this poem, let's study the poetic devices used. The poem is full of poetic devices, figures of speech. Where the mind is without fear, the head is held high. The very first line of the poem has alliteration in it. Yes, you can see sound h is repeated in quick succession. Therefore, it is an example of alliteration. Let's see the next line where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Dear students, I explained here narrow domestic walls stands for the divisions that are caused by caste, religion, gender. Narrow domestic walls stands for, as I said, the divisions that are based on caste, religion, gender, etc. So there's a comparison, but there's no word that shows the comparison clearly. You might know when we use words like, as, so, as, we call it simile. Here we call it metaphor as it is an indirect comparison. In the next line, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, you can see the poet is personifying an idea, that is tireless striving, continuous efforts. So he is personifying the idea. So a human quality of stretching hands is attributed to tireless striving. There is one more figure of speech in the same line. You might have noticed the sound sir is repeated in quick succession in striving stretches. Thus, it is also an example of alliteration. Let's discuss the figures of speech in the next line, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way. Dear students, I explained here the clear stream is nothing but reason. Reason, logic is compared with the clear stream. Now, for this comparison, the poet has not used any word, for example, like, so, as, no such word is used. Thus, it is an indirect comparison. Therefore, we call it metaphor. Next line, into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. Here too, dear students, dead habits, that is superstitions, are indirectly compared with dreary desert. Thus, it is also an example of a metaphor. You might have observed sound D is repeated in this line in quick succession. Therefore, we'll call it alliteration. So there are two figures of speech in this particular line, alliteration and metaphor. Apart from this, dear students, I explained euphemism, that is use of mild expression in place of harsh one. If Tagore had said in the lines that he wants to live in a country where people are not superstitious, it would have meant that he doesn't want to live with us Indians. The reason is we are or we were superstitious, so it would have been harsh to say. Therefore, he chose to say the same thing but in mild words, in different words, by using the image of clear stream, by dreary, using the image of dreary desert. He told the same thing but in mild way. Thus, it is euphemism. The next line, where the mind is led forward by thee. Dear students, I told you there's a direct address in this line. Therefore, it is an example of apostrophe when there is direct address to God. Now, here in this particular line, there's direct address to God, but whenever there's a direct address in a line of poem to someone that is not in existence or an idea, we call it apostrophe. We can see in the last line, into that haven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Here, Tagore addresses God as my father, and it is a direct address. Therefore, we'll call it apostrophe. Dear students, also here our country is being compared with heaven, heaven of freedom. This comparison too is indirect, so we shall call it metaphor. Thus it is clear this poem is full of poetic devices and you need to study them very carefully. Dear friends, having discussed the figures of speech, the poetic devices, let's talk about the appreciation. You are aware appreciations are asked in board exam for 5 marks. So let's see how we can appreciate this poem. First, we'll have to tell the title of the poem. Where the Mind is Without Fear is a thought-provoking poem written by Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, an Indian writer, poet, and philosopher. Here, we are talking about the poem and the poet. You may use a different word to describe the poem. Here, I have used the adjective thought-provoking. The poem is written in free verse without any rhyme, scheme, or meter throughout the poem. Many of you might have understood what rhyme scheme is, and many of you already know that it is written in free verse, but some might have got confused in the word meter. Dear students, meter simply refers to rhythm in the poem. So there is no rhyme, no rhythm in this particular poem. Figures of speech like repetition, metaphor, personification are used to give more poetic effect. Dear students, I have listed repetition here only because in this whole poem you will observe the word where is repeated in the beginning of the lines. I have given an example for personification here. You may choose to write other examples which are explained in this video. Where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection. Here the poet has personified tireless striving, stretching its arm to reach its goal. Dear students, having discussed the title, the poet, rhyme scheme, and figures of speech, I will move ahead to talk about the central idea of this poem. It is simple, deeply sensitive poem which carries a universal appeal of peace and harmony. It is a prayer to God in which Tagore addresses God as my father and asks him to awaken his country into a heaven of freedom where there is a total freedom of good thoughts, good words and good actions. He wishes for a country where people should be free from fears, where knowledge would be free to all individuals and people from all castes and religions should be united. Dear friends, I hope this appreciation will give you some idea as to how we can write an appreciation. I have also provided the summary of this particular poem in this video. I hope this video will help you prepare for your board exams. Thank you for watching this video. Bye bye.